Let's imagine you're standing at the edge of a river. It's quiet, too quiet. No movement, no sound, no warning. Just still water stretching out in front of you. Let's take a step back. No, not a few thousand years, not even a few million. Go back far enough, and you don't recognize the world anymore. The air feels heavier, the land stretches wider, and everything around you is bigger. Way bigger! You're not looking at a large animal, you're looking at something the size of a building. A bird taller than a human is sprinting across open plains. A mammal the size of a tank is shaking the ground with every step. Even the insects look like they shouldn't exist. This is the world of prehistoric land gigantism. And unlike the ocean, where size makes sense because of buoyancy, this is happening on land, where gravity should make being massive a disadvantage. So why did prehistoric land produce so many giants? And more importantly, why don't we see them anymore? To understand this, and we have to start with one of the strangest examples. Not a dinosaur, not a reptile, a mammal. This is Paraceratherium.
Paleontologists have made a spine-tingling find in the sands of the Sahara Desert, a new species of dinosaur.
And at first glance, it looks like someone tried to build a giraffe without understanding how giraffes work. It has a long neck, a massive body, and legs that look almost too thin to support it. But this wasn't some fragile animal. This was the largest land mammal to ever exist, standing over 16 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 20 tons. That's heavier than most dinosaurs you think of. So how does something this massive even survive on land? The answer isn't strength, it's height. See, Paraceratherium didn't need to fight. It didn't need to chase. It simply ate what nothing else could reach. Trees that smaller animals couldn't access became its entire food supply. And because it could eat where others couldn't, it didn't have competition. But here's the interesting part. Paraceratherium didn't become giant because it was trying to dominate. It became giant because it didn't need to compete. And this idea shows up again and again and again. Because prehistoric land wasn't just full of giants. It was full of opportunities to become one. Now let's move to something much more aggressive, because not all giants were peaceful. Some of them were built to kill. This is Titanoboa.
This animal is going to reset everything we know about what it truly means to be a giant snake.
The largest snake to ever exist. And unlike modern snakes, this wasn't something you could step away from. It was over 40 feet long, weighing more than a car. And it didn't just hunt small animals, it hunted anything it could overpower. So why did snakes get this big? It wasn't just food, it was the environment. Back then, the earth was hotter, much hotter. And for cold-blooded animals like snakes, temperature is everything. The warmer the environment, the more energy they can produce. The more energy they have, the bigger they can grow. And Titanoboa wasn't alone. This same pattern created giant lizards, giant crocodilians, giant reptiles across the board. Because when the planet heats up, reptiles scale up. But reptiles weren't the only giants, because something even stranger happened. Mammals started doing it too. Now fast forwards to a world after the dinosaurs. You'd expect things to get smaller, more balanced, but instead, we get something like this. This is Megatherium.
Las tareas de extracción, bueno, es lo habitual en nuestro yacimiento, que son acantilados costeros.
A giant ground sloth, and no, it didn't move slowly like modern sloths. It stood over 20 feet tall when upright, with claws the size of knives. This wasn't a passive animal. This was something that could defend itself against almost anything. So why did mammals suddenly start becoming giants? Because something was missing. Predators. After the dinosaurs went extinct, there was a gap. A massive gap in the ecosystem, and when that happens, life fills it. Mammals didn't just evolve to survive, they evolved to replace. And without constant pressure from apex predators, they had room to grow. Bigger bodies, more strength, more dominance. And once one species gets bigger, everything else has to follow, because now size becomes the new standard. And this is where things start to connect, because prehistoric gigantism isn't random. It's a pattern, a repeating cycle. When conditions allow it, life scales up. And when life scales up, everything else has to keep up. Bigger prey creates bigger predators. Bigger predators force even bigger prey. And the cycle continues until something breaks it. Now, let's talk about something even weirder, because not all giants were expected. Some of them shouldn't have existed at all. Take terror birds, massive flightless birds, standing over 10 feet tall, with skulls designed to crush bone, and speed that rivaled land predators. This wasn't a dinosaur, but it might as well have been. So how does a bird become a top predator? Simple. There was nothing else stopping it. In isolated environments, like prehistoric South America, mammalian predators weren't dominant yet, so birds filled the role. And just like everything else, they got bigger. Because again, size solves problems. It removes threats, creates dominance, and most importantly, it ends competition. But here's the problem with gigantism. It works until it doesn't. Because being massive comes with a cost. You need more food, more space, more stability. And the moment the environment changes, giants struggle first because they can't adapt quickly, they can't hide, they can't shrink, and they definitely can't survive without enough resources. This is why most prehistoric giants disappeared, not because they were weak, but because they were too specialized. They were built for a world that no longer existed. And when that world changed, they couldn't keep up. Like prehistoric South America, mammalian predators weren't dominant yet, so birds filled the role. And just like everything else, they got bigger. Because again, size solves problems, it removes threats, creates dominance, and most importantly, it ends competition. But here's the problem with gigantism. It works until it doesn't. Because being massive comes with a cost. You need more food, more space, more stability, and the moment the environment changes, giants struggle first because they can't adapt quickly, they can't hide, they can't shrink, and they definitely can't survive without enough resources. This is why most prehistoric giants disappeared, not because they were weak, but because they were too specialized. They were built for a world that no longer existed. And when that world changed, they couldn't keep up. So where does that leave us today? Because giants didn't disappear completely. We still have elephants, giraffes, large predators, but nothing like before. Nothing on the same scale. Because modern ecosystems are tighter, more competitive, more efficient. There's less room for something massive to exist without consequence. And there's another factor now, us, humans. Large animals are easier to hunt, easier to track, easier to eliminate, and because of that, the largest creatures today are often the most vulnerable. So prehistoric land wasn't just full of giants by chance. It was a perfect storm: warm climates, abundant food, low competition, and constant evolutionary pressure, all pushing life in one direction. Bigger and bigger and bigger until the system collapsed. Because gigantism isn't stable, it's temporary, a peak, and once you reach the peak, there's only one direction left: down. But the pattern never truly ends. Because evolution doesn't stop, it just waits for the right conditions to try again. And if the world ever becomes like that again, you might not recognize what comes next, because the next giants won't be the same as the last ones. They never are. And if you want to see how evolution creates something just as terrifying, but in a completely different way, check out the next video, because being big is only one way to survive. You look down and see nothing, but something sees you. Not from the shore, not from the trees, from the water. And the worst part is, it hasn't moved in hours, maybe longer, because what's watching you isn't just a predator. It's something older than almost everything alive today. Older than lions, older than birds, older than most mammals. This animal was already hunting when dinosaurs still ruled the earth. And when everything else died, it didn't. It stayed exactly the same. This is the crocodile, and nothing about it is normal. Most predators survive by being faster, stronger, or smarter than everything around them. Crocodiles do none of that. They don't chase, they don't stalk, they don't even look like they're alive half the time. They just wait. Half their body disappears beneath the surface. Only their eyes remain, floating, unblinking. You could stare directly at one and still not realize what you're looking at. Because crocodiles don't just hide, they erase themselves. And this is where things start to get strange, because most animals can't stay perfectly still for long. Their muscles twitch, their breathing gives them away. Their bodies need to move. But crocodiles, they shut everything down. Their heart slows. Their breathing becomes almost non-existent. Their entire body drops into something that looks more like a standby mode than life. They don't look like predators anymore. They look like part of the river itself. And they can stay like this for hours, completely invisible, until something makes a mistake. Because eventually, something always comes to the water. A deer, a zebra, a buffalo. Animals that are powerful, fast, built to survive. But the moment they step into water, everything changes. Because water doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the crocodile. And when the crocodile decides to move, it doesn't look real. There's no warning, no build-up, no second chance. And while the prey is panicking, burning energy, desperately trying to breathe, the crocodile is completely calm. Because it doesn't need to breathe, it can hold its breath for over an hour. Its body literally reroutes oxygen to only the organs that matter. Its heart slows down on purpose. So while everything else is running out of time, the crocodile has nothing but time. But here's something most people don't realize. Crocodiles aren't just ambush predators, they're planners. In some areas, crocodiles create paths through water, repeated routes, over and over again, and eventually, other animals start using them because they look safe, but they're not safe. They're designed. Crocodiles learn behavior. They memorize patterns. They know exactly where animals drink, when they drink, how they move, and they position themselves perfectly. This isn't instinct anymore. This is strategy. And it gets even more disturbing. Because crocodiles don't just see, they feel. Along their jaws are tiny pressure sensors, so sensitive, they can detect the smallest vibration in water, which means you don't have to see a crocodile for it to know exactly where you are. Every step, every movement, every ripple, it feels all of it. And it doesn't need to rush, because it knows something you don't. You will eventually get closer, and when you do, that's when it ends. But maybe the strangest part about crocodiles is how little they've changed. Over 200 million years. Think about that. Entire species evolved, adapted, grew more complex, and disappeared. Dinosaurs ruled the planet and vanished. Mass extinctions wiped out most life on Earth. But crocodiles, they stayed. Almost exactly the same, because they didn't need to evolve. They were already perfect. Their strategy didn't depend on speed, or intelligence, or size. It depended on patience, and patience that doesn't go extinct. But there's something else about crocodiles that makes even less sense. They should be dead, not individually, as a species. Because crocodiles live in some of the most dangerous environments on Earth. Dirty water, rotting meat, infections, injuries. Things that kill most animals quickly, barely affect them. Crocodiles have one of the strongest immune systems ever discovered. They can survive wounds that would be fatal to almost anything else. Their blood contains compounds that destroy bacteria at an extreme level, which means even when they're injured, they don't really die. They just keep going. And that's part of the reason they've lasted so long. But here's the catch. For something this powerful, this efficient, this perfectly designed, you'd expect crocodiles to dominate everything. But they don't, because their entire existence depends on one thing: water. Take a crocodile out of water, and suddenly it's not the same animal. It loses its advantage, its control, its environment. On land, things can escape. On land, speed matters again. So crocodiles exist in this strange balance. They are nearly unstoppable, but only in the right place. And that's what makes them so dangerous, because you don't always know when you've stepped into that place. The river looks calm, the surface looks empty. Everything feels normal, but underneath, something ancient is waiting. Something that has done this thousands of times before. Something that doesn't get tired, doesn't rush, doesn't make mistakes, because it doesn't need to. It just waits. And eventually, something always comes to the water, and when it does, the crocodile doesn't chase. It doesn't need to, because after 200 million years, it already knows how this ends. If you want to see another animal that evolution turned into something almost impossible to survive against, check out the next video, because crocodiles aren't the only creatures that figured out that waiting is the deadliest strategy of all.